Recently, as just the relaxing bender, I decided to play through The Witness, a game that I thought was a really nice puzzle game to flex a muscle that wasn't a twitch, fight, or flight reaction. Something you could take your time playing, meeting the challenges of the game, slowly getting obsessed with these line puzzles, which are kind of the point. But looking at some user reviews for the game, well, comes the usual comments that people have for Jonathan Blow games, and that it is pretentious. Whenever there's a game that decides to tell its plot in a less conventional way, people tend to go crazy and label it as not a game and call it pretentious. Why is this the case? What makes a game pretentious, and why does this even matter? Now, I really wouldn't have a problem with people calling certain games pretentious if they weren't really using the word wrong. I know words can change in their meaning, but when people are calling something pretentious, they're usually not saying what they think they're saying. But see, people tend to apply this word to games that they think are trying to feign a higher intelligence than it actually is giving, but when people use the word, it usually applies to a story that they don't understand or misunderstand. It's usually from works that people fail to draw meaning from. A lot of these works, I think, are some really creative works. The word seems to be used more as something to demean said works and people. Really. Oh, that game is pretentious because it's basically like pressing a button on a remote. I mean, but what are games anyways? Oh, that book is pretentious because it doesn't have a traditional narrative structure. Or that sculpture is pretentious because it's just a urinal. Oh, okay. These interpretations usually takes these works out of context and what they are trying to do. Stanley's Parable isn't really trying to be a mechanically deep game. It's a game exploring the relationship between a player and the creator. Catch-22 is about the flawed nature of bureaucracy and language. And Duchamp's fountain a criticism of what counts as art in a really specific movement that was pushing the boundaries of art by remixing and using materials that really wouldn't be considered art. My point here is that much of the criticism seems to be putting these works in context, which they're not really meant to be presented. And since pretentiousness is how one presents itself, wouldn't it be a misrepresentation by trying to say that it has a false sense of importance when you don't really even consider the media in the way that it's meant to be consumed or thought of? And yeah, I do think there's a level of competence of the work, you know. The work still has to live up to what you're saying it is. Most of the time, actually, it's not the artsy indie games that do this, but the games with the most stock standard stories told in a normal way. Grand Theft Auto 5 acts like it has cutting criticism of America when most it really feels like, lol, look at this beer, it's called Pisswasser, because, you know, it tastes like piss water. You could almost feel the writer that came up with this think to themselves, well, it's time to call it a day. I kind of find it weird that more tightly focused and creative works such as Gone Home or The Vanishing of Ethan Carter gets labeled as pretentious, while there's games like BioShock Infinite running around, you know, being hailed as the game that proved that video games are art. Yeah, video games, movies, art in general, though, I feel aren't the most pretentious things I see. Well, it is marketing in general. A bunch of these executives in suits trying to convince us that their product is the best goddamn thing out there, using these buzzwords, ascribing different values to perfume, cigarettes, or freaking cars, really. If I have to listen to Matthew McConaughey mumble a bunch of words while he's driving his car down a street, I swear to God, wait, why am I even watching television? And, oh yeah, and I'm looking straight at you, Democratic People's Republic of Korea. You're not fooling me. Both you and me know you're none of those things. Well, maybe the Korea part, but, you know, that's up in the air. But you're certainly not, you know, Democratic Republic or Peoples. Anyways, that's not really the point here. Sorry for that tangent. So why do we have many people pointing at, well, say video games in particular, saying that these are pretentious video games? Well, it has to do with how we see video games as a form of art or not. What even is a game, and even how looted narrative is handled in video games. And these topics are really long and complicated and are deserving of their own videos. Why do I keep doing this to myself? Part of this has to do with how goddamn hard it is to analyze video games. See, music really only has sound to deal with, and oh god, can that even get complicated in and of itself? But paintings use visuals, movies use both, and video games, well, they do all of the above, and then they add the most complicated of them all, gameplay. And the language of gaming is different in more ways than any of the other media. And also, gaming is a relatively new medium. The language of analyzing is still being codified, and so with time and education, maybe people would come to understand these more unconventional games. But all in all, why do we trash what other people value? I think the reason we attach ourselves to these pieces of media is because we love stories. We feel as if they speak to us on a certain level. We value these stories, and well, isn't that what matters? Yeah, there are certain games that I really don't see why people like them, but really, if they do speak to people on a certain level, well, I don't really see what the point is in trying to ruin that for people. I think that it's kind of beautiful that we're all trying to find value in the things that we watch, the things that we consume. And that's where a lot of people, that's kind of what we're doing, trying to find value in small things. And I guess that 9 times out of 10, I guess I would sympathize with more with the person trying to find meaning in things than the cynic trying to say, no, you're stupid. I don't know. Value and meaning is just something that really hits down in the heart. It's these movies, these games, these pieces of music, and somebody finds something worthwhile, I think that we should listen. Genuinely, I think that in general, that people are very trusting people, and maybe it's the optimist in me that's speaking here, but I think that maybe we should listen to other people, what they have to say. Maybe listen for a while, value-wise, because people say these things for a reason, and at the end of the day, isn't all we're trying to do is find meaning in life?